r/nosleep. Hosted by you/let's split up. Am I a jerk for refusing to participate in my roommate's creepy doll game anymore? Part 1. My roommate made up a game in which she sews together a creepy sock doll and pretends it's alive a la Elf on the Shelf, and asked me to join. I mean, would you play that game? Why not name the doll Chucky while you're at it? Right, so I played it. And let me preface this by saying last I checked I was of sound mind, accepting my dubious choice of major, philosophy, a degree that will allow me to think very deeply about the universe and my lack of employment in it. I am a scholar and a skeptic, and wouldn't believe any of the account I'm about to give if I hadn't seen the doll move myself. The doll, or rather, whatever evil force is moving the doll, is real. It is walking around my house. It may or may not have disappeared our hamster, who often escapes her cage anyway, so it could all be a coincidence, but still, as of this moment, Binky is missing. So, prank? Elaborate puppetry? Hallucinatory episode? I hate all of those options, but since I can't come up with any better explanation, hive mind, willing to help me science this thing? Let's jump right in. The scenario. I, Plato, am a fourth-year philosophy student, a major that explains why I am still broke and single. Folks, pardon me if you've heard some of these jokes before, they're obligatory for my philosophy degree. I live in a house with 3 roommates, Karen, Binky the hamster, and Kurt. It all started a few days ago with Karen's fab new idea to promote her channel. Karen is pursuing her degree in motivational makeup tutorials and clickbait, or as she calls it, marketing. She frequently drags Binky and me into her ongoing quest for likes, shares, and subscribers. Much as I'm apt to criticize the vapidity of our modern-day scramble for clicks, the hamster has more followers than I have job options. Anyway, Karen opened her proposal with, "Hey, this year for Halloween, we should play the doll game." "The doll game?" I said. "The doll game." She enthused. "It's like Elf on the Shelf, but you play on Halloween instead of Christmas, and you use a doll you make yourself." Elf on the Shelf? I'd rather play Sty on the Eye. It's where I get a sty on my eye and go to the doctor rather than having to play this game. And okay, in my defense, it's hard to come up with catchy rhymes on the fly, speaking of which. This game sounds made up. Did you make it up? Is this for your TikTok? No, she said with huge doe eyes, lashes fluttering. I side-eyed her. And it's called the doll game? Doesn't it need a catchy name that'll let people know right away what it is? Like Elf on the Shelf? Doll in the Hall. Folks, the brilliance that is Karen.
"Sure, I guess, for Halloween," said I, knowing we are in March, and I'd have a full 7 months before my required participation.
This is a bad habit of mine, present me often makes commitments that future me regrets. Cue Karen, swooping in with a dose of instant karma for present me. "Oh good, you'll do it? Sweet. We don't have to wait for Halloween. We can try it now and see how things go, and do it again if it's popular." I felt sort of tricked. But, fine. We were playing Doll in the Hall. Not that our apartment has a hall, details, schmtails. Apparently, it was a riff on some creepy game Karen found that went viral circa 2006, called Hitori Kaku Renbo because it's a Japanese horror game. Of course it is. This translates more or less to hide and seek alone, in which you make a doll, stuff it with rice and a bit of hair or fingernails. Ah yes, the horror flavor text, because handmade dolls aren't creepy enough, and then put it in the bathtub. Stab the doll with a sharp object and tell it, "You're it." You go and hide, count to 10, and the doll comes searching for you. If it catches you, it kills you with whatever implement you stabbed it with. Win, and you. Well, I guess you win a creepy doll. But you also lose, because you spent hours making the doll whose only purpose is to kill you. And truly, do we blame the doll on this one? You created it, you brought it into this world, and then you stabbed it. You monster. Truly a game where there are no winners, only sincere regrets. Fortunately, Karen's version, Doll in the Hall, doesn't involve stabbing. Yay! Score 1 for lack of cruelty to dolls. Instead, in the days leading up to Halloween, you move the doll around, similar to the Elf on the Shelf. On Halloween, it comes to life for real when the spirits inhabit it. Nothing about this could go wrong, surely. But we were playing in March, so, in Karen's words, it probably won't come to life. Right. Natch. Now, my general reluctance to play had nothing to do with fears of the doll actually coming to life. Oh, if only I knew then. I just figured it would be a pain in the butt to play along for the camera every time Karen wanted to upload a new video tracking the movements of her homemade Frankendoll, and expecting me to be a willing actor. But it's not like she had a lot of options. Binky was already the star of 80% of her content, and our other housemate, Kurt, well, was Kurt. So, doll in the hall. Sure, I said. Let the games begin. Karen squealed in delight, and actually hugged me, which made my heart palpitate a little bit because I have a small unrequited crush on her. Then she asked for a clipping of my hair or nails, and I immediately regretted every life choice I'd ever made that had led me to this moment. Fingernail clippings? Gross. A lock of hair it was. Me, Binky, Karen, locks from each of us went in. The doll, sewn by Karen out of socks, looked like what can only be described as the horrific love child of a demented sock monkey and a junkie elf on the shelf fallen on hard times. It had mismatched buttons for eyes, sock arms and legs, and a wire skeleton so that it could be extra terrifying. Quoth Karen, "It's not for scariness, it's so it can be bent to different poses." I vetoed rice as a filling material. I wasn't about to let her waste that much rice, nor was I willing to eat said rice after it had been mixed in with our hair clippings. So she used cotton stuffing. Some of our hair went in with the cotton, but she used most of it to make these weird little pigtails sticking off the top of its head. Cute. Once it was finished, we all sat around for a naming ceremony, which was really just an excuse for Karen to make a promotional video. I suggested Cuddles. Karen wanted to call it Boo Boy, presumably so she could call it her boo for short. Binky had the deciding vote, and no surprise, voted with Karen. Boo Boy it was. The game begins. Boo Boy spent the next few days appearing and disappearing from various locations around the house. Karen generally played dumb, asking me in that Bambi-eyed way she always did when lying, "Did you move Boo Boy? I can't find him." Magnanimously, I played along. There was one day when we really couldn't find him. I could tell because Karen came to me, asking where he was with a sly look. Apparently she thought I'd moved him and was getting more proactive about being in the game. I wasn't. I may have been volunteered like a reluctant audience member pulled onto the stage for the magician's act, but I had no plans to cross the line from audience participant to magician's assistant. I've seen what they do to those assistants when they put them in the boxes and bring out the saw. When I did my usual shtick of "Gosh, where could he be?" and she realized I didn't actually know, she panicked. Turned out it was Kurt who had him. Kurt seldom interacts with us and isn't a student. As to what he does: mafia hitman, caveman method actor, head summoner for a Cthulhu-worshipping cult bent on bringing a reign of supernatural terror into the world? Pretty much nothing would surprise me. He showed up with Boo Boy in hand, demanding, "What the fuck is this voodoo shit?" I giggled nervously while Karen took out her phone to film. Kurt snapped at her to get that camera out of his face and warned that it's a bad idea to mess with black magic fuckery. Then he stormed off, telling us he wasn't going to be involved in the game and he wasn't responsible for whatever bad shit goes down. This was probably the most Kurt had spoken to either of us in 6 months. I was a little concerned by his outburst. Not, again, because of any fears of the supernatural, but because I prefer to keep the peace between us. Also, it is his house. Karen, for her part, was delighted by Kurt's overreaction, and shut herself up in her room with Boo Boy to make another video about it. So far so normal. But then, last week, things started getting weird. For example, on Monday, I was sitting on the couch, reading, philosophy, natch. I'm kidding. I was on TikTok watching people ascend mountains of milk crates. Oh god, I'm part of the problem. Ahem. I was lost in videos of people tumbling from crate piles like inept mountain goats, and Karen was trying various filters on Binky, Binky with bunny ears, Binky with human teeth, Shutter Binky Karen face swap. Suddenly, Kurt's door burst open. He hurled Boo Boy at us, his voice shaking with fury. "I told you not to involve me in your voodoo shit. It's not fucking funny. Next time either of you leaves this piece of shit rat fucking dark magic thing in my room, I will rip it up and burn it." He slammed the door. Karen burst out laughing. "Oh my god," she cried. "Oh my god, I wish I'd had that on video. That was so good. Well played, Plato, that was awesome." "It wasn't me," I said, frowning. "Next time tell me you're gonna do that so I can record it." Did you hear him? I don't think there's going to be a next time if you want Boo Boy to make it to the end of this game. Also, it wasn't me." "Sure it wasn't," she snickered, and winked. Winking is something Karen does in her videos to try and look conspiratorial with the audience. Being the subject of a wink made me think that, possibly, she was in on the whole thing and had done it after all. Although, weird, that she wouldn't have her phone ready to record, had she set that up. After that incident, Boo Boy would periodically vanish and reappear in places that neither Karen nor I could explain. I assumed it was her doing, and she, presumably, assumed it was me. None of the places were that unusual. We'd find him sitting on the shelf in our rooms, or in the fridge apparently raiding the meat drawer, hidden under the bed with his arms propped under his chin so he could look out, or peeking up at us from a drawer that was mostly closed. He seemed especially prone to appearing around Binky's cage, but I assumed that was just so Karen could get both Binky and Boo Boy in her videos. Then Binky disappeared. "Alright, enough is enough," Karen announced, in a tone that indicated she was genuinely upset, though at the time I had no idea why. "Where is Binky?" "Huh? I don't know. She's not in her cage?" If she was in her cage, would I be asking? Maybe she escaped. "Look, the top is off the cage and the bedding is a mess inside. It's obvious she was chased around by someone trying to grab her. Where did you put her?" "I don't know why you're coming at me. Maybe Kurt let her out for some reason. But it certainly wasn't me. Kurt's out of town. He left yesterday, remember?" Binky was still in her cage. "Really? I didn't remember. Kurt leaving for a week or two at a stretch was not unusual. I just didn't bother to keep track of it." Karen wouldn't back down. She genuinely thought I stole her hamster, and possibly even did something to her. Why would I ever hurt Binky? I'm a vegetarian. I can't even watch movies where animals get hurt. A horror movie where the cat yowls, or the dog runs out barking and then yelps in pain? I'm out. I told her this, and Karen shouted, "So did you take her to liberate her then? Because you hate cages?" "You're being ridiculous," I snapped, which wasn't my most diplomatic, but I was feeling defensive. "I don't lie. I never lie. And I wouldn't liberate a domesticated hamster from what is honestly a pretty cushy life, even if Binky is an unwilling social media star. Like most influencers, she'd never make it in the wild." I pointed this out to Karen, but she was hysterical, worried about her Binky, and retreated to her room crying. I felt bad for a few moments. In my attempt to diffuse her accusations with humor, I might have appeared to make light of the situation. In fact, I was very worried for Binky, too. I looked over at Binky's cage. I froze, chilled. There were two button eyes looking out at me from the edge of the bookshelf beside the cage. Boo Boy's mismatched eyes and little pigtails bore an expression that, if I were to anthropomorphize a doll, I'd term naughty. Mischievous. Evil. I stared for a moment, and without taking my gaze off it, called, "Hey, Karen, did you move Boo Boy?" No response. If she found Boo Boy by the cage later, she'd definitely get upset. She'd likely assume I put him there and was messing with her. I grabbed the doll. Bits of wood shaving clung to its sock arm. Frowning, I plucked off the shavings. In hindsight, this should have been a red flag roughly the size of Mars. The equivalent of the moment in a horror movie when the camera pans to the killer doll sitting smiling with the missing dog's bloody collar in its porcelain fingers. The moment I usually nope out of any such film.
But as I've said before, I, a rational person, do not believe in ghosts.
I assumed that A, Kurt had set this up before he left to pay us back for pranking him that one time, or B, Karen had set it all up herself, and was now engaged in an elaborate dramatization, all in service to the gods of social media fame. And if it weren't for what happened later that night, I'd still assume this to be the most plausible explanation, and I'd be posting on Ida with my fellow jerks, instead of here, on No Sleep, with you spooky cookies. Of which I guess I am now one. How do you do, fellow ghost-busting kids? Anyway, I decided I'd had enough of Boo Boy, and the best thing to do to end this before her game got way out of hand was to destroy it. First steps. I took Boo Boy into the kitchen and snipped its arm off with scissors. I was intending to cut it up and toss it in the trash. Only, while I was cutting, I began to feel a shade of remorse. After all, Karen's videos were important to her. She'd put a lot of time into this Doll in the Hall series. And if I destroyed the doll now, she wouldn't finish. The least I could do was destroy it on video for her. Plus if I destroyed it, I might ruin our relationship as amicable roomies. So, while I considered her accusations about Binky to be wildly overstepping, I retracted my behavior. I sewed back the arm and considered what to do with the doll, then? Eventually, I settled on hiding it. I'd agree to give it back if she stopped taking things too far and promised to wrap up the game. I hid the doll inside a lockbox with my birth certificate, social security card, and other docs. A place Karen wouldn't dare search, and from which Boo Boy couldn't escape. I chastised myself for this thought almost as soon as I had it. Even so, I made sure the box was extra locked, and tied a ribbon on it for good measure, before shoving it deep into my closet. The key remained on my person. Karen was still holed up in her room. I could hear her making a video about Binky's disappearance and asking her followers for advice. This seemed to confirm my theory that the whole thing was an elaborate circus act for clicks. Presumably, she'd blame the doll later and the show would go on. Fabulous. I buried myself in my reading, and thought nothing more of it that night. Eventually, I went to sleep. I woke in the dark in the dead of night. At first I wasn't sure what had awoken me, but when I clicked the light on, I frowned, because my closet door was ajar. A faint whisper, a rustling, drifted to my ears from the carpeted floor just outside my door. Binky? I wondered. Maybe Binky really had escaped, somehow. I got up, padding softly to the door, and opened it. The darkness out in the living room area was too complete for me to make out anything but dim shapes, but I definitely caught the sound of scurrying just before it reached the door, like something darting away toward the sofa. I fumbled round for a moment along the wall and then flicked a switch. My heart dropped to my toes. It's lucky I didn't have to pee, because if there'd been anything in my bladder, I'd have emptied it. The doll, Boo Boy, was walking. It took 2 running steps along the sofa before, like Woody in Toy Story worried about being caught, it abruptly froze. Froze, and remained frozen, as if it had been posed there. I stared. The doll, it seemed, stared back. Karen? I called. But there was no response. Presumably Karen was sound asleep. I strode over to the doll and snatched it up, half expecting it to come to life and writhe like a viper in my grip. But it was just a doll. Its button eyes, though, seemed to be watching me, just my imagination, I told myself. I stepped to Karen's door and knocked, and when there was no response, opened it to soft snoring. Definitely asleep. There was no way she could have moved the doll and dashed to her room and into bed without me seeing. There had been no one in the living room. No one. Just the doll. I flicked on the Karen's light switch, thoroughly spooked. What's going on? Karen slurred, yawning and sitting up. She asked if I'd found Binky. I told her no. Then I told her what I'd seen. Her eyes grew wide, with fear? No. Of course not. With delight. Then she got out her phone to have me do a fucking interview. My co-star Boo Boy alongside me. FML. But the walking. It was real. I swear to you it was real. This is why I moved my post from Ida to here. I need your help. Karen won't give up playing this game with Boo Boy. And I. Is it crazy that I sort of think this might be dangerous? What do I do? If I destroy the doll, Wibta? Resolving ethical conundrums is supposed to be one of the few things my degree is useful for, but philosophy doesn't really cover, you know. Paranormal puppetry. What do I do? Hosted by you/Let's Split Up. My roommate's creepy doll went viral. Am I a jerk for deleting the video? Part 2. After footage of the doll walking through our apartment went viral, people responded with many sensible suggestions, which I wish I'd followed. Instead, I followed my housemate's significantly less sensible suggestion that we continue to play Doll in the Hall. If you've never heard of this game, and why should you, given my housemate made it up? It's one in which you sew together a doll from socks and human, and hamster, hair and pretend it's alive a la Elf on the Shelf until eventually, the doll actually does come to life, at which point if you're still playing, Coing Ra Tu La Tions. You win a Darwin Award, since any possessed doll that actually comes to life is definitely going to remove you from the gene pool. In case you're wondering, yes, at the end of the last post, the doll did come to life. Because of course it did. So, you know, great. But before we dive into this tragicomedy, an important update. We found Binky, skittish and shaken but otherwise okay. So, for those of you whose greatest concern during the previous post was entirely for the hamster, rest easy, there's no animal endangerment this time around. We sent her to stay with Karen's sister. Do I blame you for being more concerned for a hamster than for me and my fellow humans? No. No, I do not. On this I, and Karen are in complete agreement. No one had better mess with our little Binky Boo. Not to be confused with Karen's other Boo, the ragdoll of nightmares. Now. On to the big bad Boo. The situation. It all started out like a wacky sitcom. Cue title credits for Boo Boy and Me, in which the possessed sock doll wanders around the house engaging in increasingly wacky hijinks, to which my housemate Karen is always oblivious, much to the exasperation of yours truly. I swear, he really moved. I say, mugging for the camera. Insert laugh track. These sorts of scenarios are so played out I can't even watch them on television without groaning, thus I cannot even begin to express the frustration of having it play out IRL. I'd complain, Just kill me now, but that might be a little too apropos. Nor can I count how many times I lay on the couch with my arm flung dramatically over my face, wondering if I'd lost my marbles and pondering my options, contacting the Catholic Church, prayer, exorcism, skipping town and joining a commune in the woods. For example, the morning after my previous post, I was just grabbing more granola from the pantry when motion in my periphery caught my eye. Boo boy. It came strolling casually out of Karen's room. DJJJBBBBTH, I exclaimed as I dropped the granola and pointed, and Boo boy froze. Karen looked over and laughed. Good one, Plato. Insert laugh track. This went on for literally days. Then on Sunday, I was in the middle of cleaning dishes when Karen's ear-splitting shriek launched me so high I practically grazed the ceiling. I dropped the plate into the sink and rushed into the living room. Karen stood with her hands clapped to her mouth. She pointed at Boo boy, frozen in the middle of the floor mid-stride. He moved. She squealed. Yeah. I burst. That's what I've been telling you. This thing is moving. It's freaky as shit. We should probably destroy it. No. She squeaked, eyes wide. He's our baby. Our what now? She snatched up the doll. Excuse me? I said. This is your horror baby, not mine. I take no responsibility for. It has your DNA. At my blank, and growing horrified, stare, she added, your hair. And Binky's. All three of us. Okay, first, I'm not sharing maternity rights with a hamster. And secondly, that thing is not a baby. Oh my god, I have to catch it on video. Karen, do you not see how freaky this shit is? But she was already racing to get her phone. Cue interview of me, again, verifying what she just observed. Boo boy, the monster love child of two humans and a hamster, strolling around our living room like some sort of discount Chucky. I was doing dishes when it happened, so I still had my apron on and my best scowl. It was all very domestic. And also very wrong. I was muttering about how I wish we'd just aborted my button-eyed co-star when Karen enthused, we should set up cameras with motion sensors. You like science, right? Shouldn't we science it? I do like science. But I also like being alive. And I especially dislike, I have just recently discovered, possessed dolls walking around my home. Didn't you base Boo boy on some Japanese game where the doll tries to kill you? I snapped. Only if you stab it. You haven't stabbed him, have you? At my silence, she burst, wait, you stabbed our baby? I mean, not exactly. I guiltily explained about cutting its arm off and then sewing it back up. Oh. Well, I'm sure Boo boy understands. Like, if he were to snip off your arm, he'd probably sew it back. Karen. I'm kidding. Besides, how is a doll going to harm you? He doesn't even have fingers. He can't hold anything. He doesn't have muscles in those little sock legs either, but seems to be ambulating pretty well. Come on, he hasn't behaved in any bad way, has he? She waved him at my face. This could be huge. Actual evidence of supernatural phenomena. Like, you and I and Boo boy could change the whole world. We'll be famous forever. And if it gets dangerous, we'll destroy the doll, I promise. Just 2 days. We just need video. In the end, I agreed to her request that we continue to allow Boo boy to wander unrestricted around the house because, and hear me out here, I am an idiot. Boo boy and me. Before I explain how everything went predictably and horribly awry, a bit more on my motives and methodologies. Once upon a time, I was contemplating a career in veterinary medicine. And before anyone questions why I made the incomprehensible decision to switch to philosophy, no, it's not because I enjoy being poor. I've mentioned before, I think, my reaction to the sounds of animals yelping in pain? It's why I noped out of that major and instead into one where I get to ponder such profound questions as, what is pain? How intensely do animals feel pain? Why must animals feel pain? And many other mysteries of the universe I share with customers while also asking, would you like fries with that? In case you missed part 1, these jokes are an obligatory part of my philosophy degree. So anyway, based on my dubious credentials of having finished approximately 1/10 of a zoology major, I decided to begin our scientific inquiry with the question. Is the doll moving or being moved? That is it sentient? Feeling? Reasoning? Before we rush too far along this track, whoa there, let's not put Descartes before day horse. No? Okay, well, moving on.
I, a zoologist, know that even the lowliest life forms exhibit a reflexive response to pain.
You or a fruit fly, yank off one of your limbs and you writhe. Boo Boy does not react to such stimuli, ergo, it is likely that Boo Boy is not of its own volition moving, but rather, is being moved. And the manipulating force is invisible to the naked eye and thus likely unobservable on the visible light spectrum, making the pet cams I purchased unlikely to capture evidence of it. But we could at least document its manifestation through its manipulation of Boo Boy and potentially other objects. It must have removed the ribbon from my lockbox, for example, and unlocked the box, something Boo Boy couldn't have done from the inside. I tried sharing my brilliant observations with Karen, but she said she'd leave the nerd stuff to me. Anyway, since I still possess some vestige of common sense, I told her that I'm removing all the knives, scissors, and sharp objects from the house. You know, just in case. And now, with the cameras rolling, we recommenced all in the hall. For science. Capturing the perfect shot. Over the next couple days, Karen and I glimpsed Boo Boy ambling along in the corner of our eyes so often that it became almost normal. We'd catch his diminutive figure trotting in our periphery and turn our heads just in time to see him freeze. It was like a kid playing red light green light, if the kid was a diminutive sack boy with mismatched button eyes. And yet, even though he seemed to be almost constantly in motion, I counted an average of 4 times an hour, the cameras never seemed to catch him. His movements were always too brief for the motion sensors. Or he moved just outside their range. Often overnight, the cameras got knocked over. One pet cam fell face down recording the floor, another fell against the window and captured several riveting hours of the shadows of leaves. You get the idea. I kept a log of Boo Boy's activities. Most of his movements occurred in the living room, once in a while in the bedrooms or between rooms. Once, we found him in Kurt's room, hiding under the pillow. Karen amusingly scolded him like a small child and told him not to go in there again, or you're grounded. Insert laugh track. It was a very good thing Kurt was out of town during our Little Boo Boy and Me sitcom, because he likely would have flipped his lid. In fact, it was imperative we wrap up filming before he returned. But when yesterday afternoon we surpassed the 2-day mark and no footage, by mutual consent, we continued the game. And then, it happened. Karen was on her phone late last night, doing one of her shoots in her room and talking about Binky. Apparently her followers have been hankering for more hamster vids, when she glimpsed Boo Boy and swiveled. She actually videoed him walking 3 whole steps. It was the perfect shot. It immediately started to go viral. You may have noticed, if you tried to search for the video, that it's gone now. Almost as soon as it started racking up views, it got taken down, and she deleted her account. Well, more specifically, I deleted her account. Because of what happened next.